And good evening or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Sam Nasser, and this is the Cleveland C# VB.NET user group. A little bit about our group. We meet once a month, typically every fourth Thursday. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, and we cover a variety of topics related to .NET. You can find all meeting information relating to past, present, as well as future meetings posted on meetup.com, and the URL is posted at the bottom of the slide. As always, we'd like to give a big thank you to our sponsors. Although we're meeting virtually, Tech Systems is making the space available for us once we're ready to go back in person. So I'd like to give them a big thank you. Also, iNeato has been a longtime sponsor, providing the pizza and the drinks. And for prizes, we have PostSharp and DevExpress that have supported the group for a long period. In addition, we'd like to thank NIS Technologies for sponsoring the web hosting. Also, a special offer from Manning. If you use MTP CLEC21 as the discount code, you can get 35% on a variety of books that are listed at the URL there, and I will make that available in the chat window in just a little bit. Some general information. Please keep in mind, participation is highly encouraged. There is no stupid question unless it is the one not being asked. So feel free to jump in at any point in time, either about speaking, going off mute, or entering the question into chat. However, kindly ask you that if you're not speaking, to mute your microphones just to prevent any background noise. And we always like to keep it casual, but at the same time organized, so we have enough time for the presenter to go through the slides and the demos. But again, always encouraging questions at any point. And as I mentioned earlier, the presentation will be recorded and will be posted on YouTube. And the link will be provided in the chat window in just a little bit. So for tonight's feature presentation, it's Jeff Fritz. And if you're familiar with Jeff, you know that he's into glittery coats and colorful hats related to technology. He's also regularly seen on Twitch and YouTube. He's the founder of Live Coders, which is a community of over 200 broadcasters making technical content free of charge. He's the principal program manager in Microsoft's developer division on the .NET community team, and you can see him coding live on Fritz and Friends. In addition, he's going to be coding tonight on the C# VB.NET user group. And so with that, let me turn it over to Jeff.
All right. How you doing there, friends? My name is Jeff Fritz. Yes, I'm a principal program manager on the .NET team with a focus on events, training materials, live video presentations. You can find me everywhere: YouTube, Twitch, GitHub, Twitter. I am C# Fritz in all the places. You'll find me live coding. That's writing code, answering questions, very developer talk radio format on Twitch, Tuesdays and Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I have full, how do we want to put it? I have a fully scripted stream that I have on Monday mornings at 9 a.m. where I'm teaching more or less lessons about C#, how to get started, where those other days we're building applications together and kind of talking through the development process and choices that are made and just hanging out, having a good time, writing code together. So the big question as we're coming in, we're pulling in right, we're at the 5-yard line, about to get into the end zone here. .NET 6 is coming out in 2 weeks. Not even 2 weeks. What, 10 days? It's literally a week from Monday. Okay. .NET 6 is coming out, so I've been scrubbing presentations that were .NET 5. Hey, here's what's in .NET 5, getting them ready for .NET 6. So I think this is the first time I'm presenting a what's new in .NET 6. So we'll figure out what works in this presentation and tune it going forward for when we actually have an RTM of .NET 6. So I want to talk a bit about Blazor, about .NET MAUI and its state of preview that it's in, and C#10, a little bit about ASP.NET Core and some of the things that are happening there, and how we can take advantage of that. Why is it important, and what does that mean for us? And do I need to do this whole minimal API thing? Let's talk about that. Let's get into that in this session. And I heard somebody say earlier, and pardon me for eavesdropping, but I guess it wasn't really eavesdropping if you said it in the full meeting, but somebody saying, hey, we've got some folks, we've got a customer that's looking at going forward with .NET MAUI. I love hearing that type of enthusiasm, and just want to make sure folks know it's in a preview state. So starting a project now that you don't expect to launch for another 6 months because you're going to be building and working with it, and you're okay with any changes that come along. And we're still in preview. We're not in a release candidate. So for .NET MAUI, looking at the next 3 to 6 months and a release after that, you're probably going to land at the release candidate or at the final RTM at that point, and you'll be in great shape to release. If you're looking to release something with .NET MAUI in December, in January, it's still going to be in preview, and you might be chasing it a little bit, but we can talk about that as we get into the session here today. It was for a prior client worked with and said, if it's new, I want it. You know what? That's the shiny, the chasing the tech shiny things that's very aspirational. My gosh, that's great that folks are excited about tech, but I think Kenny Rogers said it best. You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. And does that work with us? I don't know. But thinking about going and grabbing and saying, I want to adapt something that isn't quite ready for RTM yet is a little, for me, is a little too aggressive for how I like to plan projects. For others, that's not aggressive enough. Okay, that's great. So, yeah, right. And I also look at the other side of that, where I got into a discussion with some folks who were doing classic ASP still. Classic ASP has been around now for 25 years. 1997, it was released. Call it 24 years. It might as well be 25 years. It's a nice round number. It's 25 years. Literally, that framework has not only learned how to drive, it can drink, it can vote, it can rent a car. It's graduated college. It now has little baby frameworks. It's been around for a while. It's still supported in a maintenance mode with Windows. It's not as fast. It's not as going to get the features and new capabilities that you will in .NET 6. I encourage you, check out .NET 6. It's our next long-term support release of .NET. Let's talk about it. Let's get into the slides here a little bit, and then let's get into some code. I don't like talking towards slides. I want to talk about code. So right now, .NET 6 Release Candidate 2 is available. Highlights that we're looking at. Oh, shoot. I thought I cleared out that last item. But it should be C# 10 F# 6 language features. Yeah, see there. Minimal API capabilities with C# 10 and .NET 6. There's a bunch of Blazor updates. We're going to go over some of them tonight. All kinds of performance tuning on Blazor. Literally, you're going to see a 40 to 60% performance improvement in Blazor. Lots of great features that have arrived there. You're going to be able to build .NET native apps with .NET MAUI. That's in preview, but we're getting there. We're hoping to show you some of that tonight. Particularly the story that I like, because I'm a web developer, is being able to take Blazor applications and get them running as native applications. I'm one of those folks that's always looked at XAML and said, where's my divs and spans? Where's my HTML? I'm used to seeing HTML. I'm used to seeing CSS. And yeah, they did some things to make CSS work with XAML, but I feel uncomfortable dealing with XAML, and I can do WinForms, but it's WinForms. And if I wanted to build a ship and build an app that was in Battleship Gray, I'd go back and do it in VB6 in 1999. So I look at this, and what they're bringing to us now with Blazor applications with .NET MAUI is really exciting. Continued performance improvements. You can get, and I should have scratched that last bullet. I thought I had deleted it. My apologies. But you can get all of this at get.net. And of course, like I said, in 2 weeks, on, what is it, November 7th, November 8th, is .NET Conf. The .NET 6 full version will be available, the RTM, as part of that. The Gambler died at the end of that song. Ooh, Dave, thank you for reminding me. Good call. Yeah, we don't want to die at the end of the song. All right, moving on. So the first thing that I want to talk about is actually somewhat controversial. There's folks that are they're very polarized by this topic. The new minimal approach that we're bringing, that we're offering, we want folks to consider for your .NET 6 applications. And let's talk about this. We wanted to reduce the code to get started. Think about it. If you're building an application that's just hello world, even a web application, you're going to see a program CS or a startup CS file. Every app has something that looks like this: namespace, public class program, public static void main, and particularly in a web app, you have this create host builder, pass along the arguments, build it, run it, and literally this file is sitting here and it does nothing for you. You might change it if you need to change the way that you configure and launch the in this case, the web server. I need it to listen on a different port. I need to configure security a slightly different way. I need to make sure that I inject and configure how it loads configuration slightly differently than the default. All valid options, all things you can do here. But for the most part, this program CS file is a file that it's a throwaway file. It's a file that doesn't contain any logic that you wrote for your application. And this is all stuff that's boilerplate that just comes with the template, and you set it and forget it. It's not going to turn into a rotisserie chicken in 90 minutes and be all tasty for dinner, but you're going to forget about this thing and you're going to come back to it at some point in 6 months and go, ah, crumbs, I need to configure something. And just like many of us, you're going to go look at the docs and try and remember how to change up one of these things. And quite frankly, it's annoying. This is a file that's a throwaway thing that isn't doing anything to add value to your app. It's literally bootstrapping whatever framework you chose to work with, whether it's ASP.NET Core, Blazor, a console application, WPF, or WinForms. Why do we need this? This is ridiculous. I don't need this. Spoilers. Oh, thank you, Mark. Yeah, you're right. I should add the spoiler alert on that message earlier about the gambler. So look, let's simplify this. Let's get right to brass tacks. Let's get right to your code easier. Instead of having all of that nonsense, look at this: namespace, public class, public static void main. I don't care about those things. I care about that create host builder, build, run. In a new ASP.NET application, it's just that first, second, and the last line. Like web application create builder, pass in the arguments that are being shared with this application. Build it, make it that app, and say run. Now, I could have actually joined the second line and the last line there and made it just builder.build.run. Sure. I immediately got into my code. The third line there is, okay, it's doing a map to respond hello world. Big deal. Who cares? But now, instead of having this extra file laying around that has all this nonsense in it that, yeah, it's object-oriented code. Yeah, it is properly structured and interacts with, and I can specify different runtime environments to launch and point to different things. 99% of folks don't do that. They leave it the way it is, and they get right into their startup class, and they start writing things like this map get. Look, you immediately get into your code. You get to take advantage of speed enhancements in ASP.NET Core middleware. When you do a map get like this, that's the fastest way to build an API, not just because it's one line of code. And that's been there since ASP.NET Core 1, but it's also making it run a lot faster also. It's not allocating controllers and views and all those things that we're used to using when we build with ASP.NET Core. If you're new to ASP.NET Core, maybe you're coming in from something like Node, that might actually look kind of familiar to you, a map get that says, we'll just return the text, hello world. You can include and reference existing business logic and features using Nuget. So reference those other packages you have out there and turn your web application into really just a simple user interface, an API over those packages, those database access configurations that you've already got built and sitting in another library. Include it and just turn this into a simple set of commands right here. But look, maybe you don't like this. That's okay too. Your existing applications will work. That's fine. And you can continue moving forward if you like the old structure. And it's easy enough to go back to and fill it in. Jim says it looks very much like Node and Golang. Never used Python or Ruby for web. Yeah, right. And this was some of the feedback that we had gotten from students, from folks who were new to .NET. We did a bunch of user research, and they all said, I don't understand what all this ceremony is up front. Get rid of it. And on the flip side of that then was all these folks saying, well, I don't like how you've kind of magicked it away. What does that mean? It's kind of gone away and I don't know what that is anymore. Let's take a look. Let's talk a little bit about this. Let's build a new console application and talk about this a little bit. So I'm going to go new project and let's build a console application. Sure, I'll call it console 1. And sure, not .NET 6. Long-term support. Yes, we'll talk about support and the schedule here a little bit later. There we go. Creating project, and there we go. One file to do hello world. Okay, if you take a look, there is a project file out here, and it's got a bunch of stuff in here. It's a SDK. It's building with the .NET SDK. We're outputting an exe. We're using .NET 6. Implicit usings. Well, let's talk about that in a little bit when we get into C#10. And we're going to enable nullable checking. All right, we're going to turn that off. But we're just outputting hello world, right? So if I save and I run this application, I'm of course with just that one line of code going to get, I should have had some of this pre-built and running in the background. Come on, show me my console app. Where'd it go? It's hiding on the other screen. That's what happened. There it is. Hello world, and it tells me, you can press any key to close the window. Okay. Where did all the stuff go? This is a top-level program. You don't need to specify a namespace. You don't need to specify a class. This is a feature that's been available to you since .NET 5, but we can get right into our application here. Now, I mentioned you can still bring in Nuget packages. You can still do some other things. So, right, let's go grab a Nuget package here. Let's manage Nuget packages. And I'm going to browse and go grab, let's grab one of my favorite ones, link to CSV. This is a cool little package that allows you to query CSV files. Yes, I know it was restored using blah, blah, blah. I know. That's fine. Right? Yeah, link to CSV. That's the right one. You know what? Give me that one instead. Is that the one I want? I think it is. You go away. Cool. So I can now use the contents of that package to create and interact with a CSV file that might be written on disk. So let's write a quick little CSV file here. And if this doesn't work, I have the sample already built and sitting out here that I can go back to because I cheat like that. All right, give me a text file. Thank you. One of these. And I'm going to call this contacts CSV. Okay, there it is, contacts CSV. So let's put first name, last name, right? And we'll create some contacts here. We'll have Jeff Fritz. Let's put Sam in here. Sam. Who else dropped a chat in here? Do you mind if I use your name's chat room?
Not at all. Go for it.
All right, we'll put Dave in here, and I'll put Mel as well. Hope you're okay with that. Right, Mel, and who else was here? Jim. There we go. All right, so I've got a couple of contacts, and what I can do is I can drop a using statement in here. Come on, give me my using link to CSV, right? Come on. Thank you. And we can create a context for this so that it knows how to load and interact with these files. I am looking. I'm going to actually, let me just grab that code out of the other sample that I had written, because you don't want to see me type, because that's boring. There we go. It's right over there. Thank you. Now, this is very forced type of scenario here, but I'm going to create a new CSV context. That's a feature from Link to CSV that says it knows how to read a file. And I'm going to read the contents of that file into a contact object here. I could actually make that a record if I wanted to. Let's do that, just because that would be more fun, right? Yeah, I think that works. Right? Nah, make it a class. That's how the sample worked. I don't want to go and mess things up. So for each one of the contacts, the values in there, just write out who you find in that file. And I'm just going to kick that off. And it wrote hello world, and that's about it. Did we stop here? Could not find, oh, I don't have it writing to the output. Stand by. Copy to output, yes. Copy always. Got to be able to see the file. There we go. Jeff, Sam, Dave, Mel, and Jim. Okay. So literally, right, I wrote what? 6 lines of code here. If the contact object was sitting in some sort of a business library somewhere, I wrote a very simple program that was able to connect, bring the data out, write it onto the screen in 6 lines of code. No need for writing all the other goo, the HTTP. Well, let's not get into HTTP client yet. But writing controllers, writing anything to go and interact with files and do these things, it's all outside of my application, and I'm able to focus on just the business logic of writing my interaction. Okay. So we think this is going to allow folks to build applications that get you productive faster, makes it more usable, and it also means that C# as a programming language is much more approachable for folks that are learning. You didn't need to go and write a bunch of class files. You didn't need to go and explain how object-oriented design works, how classes inherit from each other, what interfaces are, public, static, void methods. What are all those things? Don't worry about it. Arguments, don't need it. You're in the top level of the program. This is what's in this file is what's executed first. You're going to have some sort of a run statement at the end of it if you need to hand off to other things. You're going to write some sort of a looping statement if this is going to be some kind of a service that's running while it's in the background as a background thread behind things. That's fine. You can still do those, but we think this eliminates all that ceremony up front and allows you to get into your application and writing and being productive faster. That's right, Dave. You're Fritz famous now. You better believe it. So we're pretty happy with this. And I can take and do the exact same thing here and wrap an API around this. So I'm just going to open the other sample that I had. Is it in my recent? It is not. Okay. Let me just go open the other one because I had it. And it is, there we go. So this time I'm going to do the exact same thing with Link to CSV. And now I'm mapping an API to go say, hello world. Come here, you. And I am going to make a request to contacts and return the contents of this contacts CSV. And there, it's sitting right there. I put a couple folks' names in it. But it's the exact same lines of code around this map get, right? We're creating a CSV context and we're just reading out the contents of those things. But this time, using this map get approach, yes, I know it's configured. Sure, go ahead, trust it. This time, I'm going to get a web application. And once again, I've still written only 6 lines of code, right? I'm able to get in, build that application, return content. There's the hello world. But if I go to /contacts, there we go. I've got my contacts being returned in JSON format. Okay. So we think, what the heck happened here? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, that's fine. 1 second here, 1 second. I need to send a message to my daughter. There we go. All right. So we think this allows you to build APIs faster. Think about it. If you're building that API that you're going to drop into a Docker container, you're building a microservice. You've probably already got some of this logic sitting around in class libraries and other places because you're building an entire system here. Put it into that Docker container, and you're going to be able to serve it and write this application faster and serve those requests faster. We think this is, we think this is important. We think this is going to be a great way to build applications. Let me move on now. There's some things going on here that I want to make sure that you don't miss that are features of C#10 that I want to talk about. I believe that's coming up next. Visual Studio 2022, we're in preview 7 right now. There is an RC that you can download, you can get your hands on. That is available and going to be in RTM on Monday. What is it? Monday the 7th? Yeah, Monday the 8th of November, literally the day before .NET Conf. .NET 6 is included with Visual Studio 2022. All kinds of productivity enhancements, improved IntelliCode, improved things that you can detect and work with the various analyzers built into Visual Studio. All kinds of UI enhancements to help with clarity, hot reload features in there, .NET MAUI support, 64-bit Visual Studio. It's our first version of Visual Studio that's 64-bit. That means it's going to should run a bit faster on your machine. This is on an Intel i7 7700, this machine that I'm running from. I normally program and code on the other one over here. It's a Ryzen 5900. Anyways, check it out, visualstudio.com/download. You can get your hands on the preview, completely free, anybody can use. But the RTM comes out in 8-9 days. So we're really excited about what's coming out there. All the demos I'm going to show you today, we're going to be in Visual Studio 2022. All right. Now let's talk about C#10 new features. There's a bunch going on in C#10 that some folks are kind of saying, why did you do this? This doesn't make sense. But it's once again about making our code more concise, simpler, focused, and get you in to the features you need to write faster. Let's take a look at some of those features, and I'm actually going to jump over. I wrote a project over here called What's New in C#10. Yeah, sure, go ahead, save that. That's fine, go ahead, I don't care. Yes, I want to stop debugging. All right, let's go over to number 1 here. So there's a bunch of things. Yeah, there we go, we'll take a look at that. Top level programs, of course, they've been around since C#9, .NET 5, but we've had records. Records have been around, and we can use records to define a small DTO object, right? A data transfer object that we can pass around, and those are reference types. They're really cool because I can define a record with a single line of code. I wrapped it here so it'll all fit on the screen, but I've got a record for a mailing address, name, address, line 1, line 2, city, region, postal code, country. And I've got properties for all those things. I can create a mailing address, initialize it with this constructor, and I've got all of those properties immediately available to me so that I can use them, right? If I go back over here to my program, right, let's comment that for right now. I can say var my address equals new, right? Come on now, not that. New address, there, you saw the IntelliSense popping up. And name, sure, is Jeff, right? And why aren't you giving me? Mailing address, that's what it was. Helps if you have the right type there. All right. Yes, thank you. And I'm going to be able to go through, come on, there they are. So 123 Main Street. You didn't think I was going to tell you my actual address, did you? City is Philadelphia, right? Region, Pennsylvania. Postal code is something like that. Country is USA, right? And that's fine, right? I've created that reference type. It's effectively a class, and all of those properties are available to me that I just initialized. Really cool. Makes sense when you need those data transfer objects that you're taking from here and you're copying it to over there. For those types of architectures where you want to pass around these small objects without having to define all these properties and carry all that around and deal with all of the minutia of passing it around, that's fine. Works great, makes things happen. But we can also make our records as a record struct. And we can specify that instead of it being a reference type, it's now a value type. So what's that mean? That means that that value type, that record we were able to create quickly, instead of it being reclaimed by the garbage collector later because it's a reference type, it's a value type. As soon as it goes out of scope, it's gone. There is no garbage collection. It's been kicked off the stack because it's no longer in memory. So you can create both read-only record structs and non-read-only record structs, right? So you can still modify them like this, right? So I can create, let's say, a point. Maybe you're doing some Cartesian math, and so we have a point with 3 doubles here. I'm going to create a record struct that is a viewer measurement. Maybe I'm creating some sort of a graph or right, I'm logging metrics of a YouTube video or a Twitch stream, and when did you measure that, and what are the current number of viewers? What are the total number of viewers at the time that you measured it? And it's that very small data point that I can pass around and reclaim memory quickly because it's a value type now. Was the first record a class? So the first record that's defined here on line 11 to Jim's question, it's not a class, but a record is a reference type. It, for all intents and purposes, behaves like a class with one small difference. Records are idempotent. They're immutable. You can't rewrite a record. You have to clone and create a new copy of it using a with statement in order to specify and create the new instance. They get released, and well, it's a reference type. They would get released later, but you end up creating these immutable records. So that's kind of cool. That gives us this ability to pass data around in a way that's guaranteed and assured. When you deal with nullability, when you deal with having to manage change, it can't be changed. They're immutable. Listen to me, I'm confusing my I terms, idempotent and immutable. This is an immutable object. So, all right. So those are record structs. Let's move on and talk about global usings. This is something that we as, and I'm saying we because I consider myself a web developer, that we as ASP.NET developers have kind of had hanging out there inside of Razor files. You had that Razor imports file that would specify, well, here's a bunch of using statements that I want all of my Razor templates to be able to reference. And I can add a global using statement like this, global space using, and the name of that namespace that I want it to include. And now that's available everywhere. What do I mean by that? So by including this here, the contact object inside my data folder, so there's my contact record, is now visible inside of program. So I had contact here. Now it knows what contact is. Even though the using statement is over here in this other file, that's okay. It's visible. It's known to the rest of my application. Now, some folks like to create some sort of a underscore usings or underscore references, some sort of a class file on the top of their project that they'll put a bunch of these global using statements into. So you know where to go back and kind of find what are all the using statements for this application. And that makes perfect sense. There'll be practices like that that kind of shake out, and we as a community figure out are a good way to store and reference these and look them up later, so that we have a little bit of convention when it comes to looking at somebody else's application and figuring out where these statements are. Because let's face it, if they're here, there, and everywhere in any which file, it's going to be a pain in the neck to maintain them. How are you going to know which ones are configured without having an IDE like Visual Studio for Mac, or Visual Studio Code that's able to detect where these are and light up features appropriately? Similarly, with global usings, there's also implicit usings. So if we go over and we take a look inside this file, there's this implicit usings enable flag. Now, you don't have to turn that on. By default, they're disabled, but implicit usings will generate a set of global using statements for you based on the type of application that you're building. Yeah, it's generating using statements for you that all of your files are able to reference. Wasn't it kind of neat over here inside the record struct that I was able to have a date time here? And well, I do have using statements up here. Let's get rid of those. And it's still okay with that date time there. It was okay that I had the using statement at the top for using system, but system date time, it knows and recognizes without having the using statements. So that's because we have this implicit using, and for the Microsoft .NET SDK, it brings in a set of using statements automatically for us. And there's a doc right here that says, well, here's what the using statements are for the different project types. And they kind of stack. So when you're working with just .NET SDK, you get system, generic collections, IO, link, net HTTP, and threading and tasks. When you are working with a web application, you get all of these ASP.NET Core and configuration, dependency injection, hosting, and logging, and the SDK. These are all generated and made available to you for your application. And if you're building a worker project, right, you're building some sort of a service out there, it gives you these few as well, and the .NET SDK. Now, you're going to ask me, do I really need to know and memorize where this thing is so I can find these things every time if it changes or something? We got you covered. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, some folks said, well, we want to see kind of the magic going on behind the box. You can actually take a peek under the covers on this. So if I turn on show all files, and you'll notice the new icons here in Visual Studio 2022. They almost look neon here in dark mode. I kind of like them, I really do. But okay, so when I turn on show all files, of course we get the bin in the obj folder. Well, if we take a look in the obj folder, right, and let's open this up just a little bit more, and we take a peek inside debug, there's .NET 6. So check this out. There is right here, what's new in C#10, that's the name of my project, .globalusings.g.cs. So by convention, the files that we generate, we put .g.cs as the extension. So if we open that up, check it out. There's the global statements, the global using statements that are generated for your application and included. So if I go back over here and we turn this to disable, build it again. The typer namespace name, yeah, see, look at that. It doesn't know what date time is. You go away, right? Over here, now it doesn't know what that is and it can't build, okay? Pretty cool that it'll, right, we can add this. And I mean, come on. How many files do you have rooting around inside of GitHub or in your source control that have these same 7 lines at the top of them in every file. Like, come on, really? So simplifying the amount of code that you have to write goes away. You don't need to include it every time. And you can add those extra using statements, and it makes things simpler to code. So we're pretty happy about those couple of new. They're really they're like razor cuts that we're getting rid of. We don't need that anymore. Also, why do we need to put namespace and wrap our stuff like this when there's only really one namespace in every file? Like, seriously, chat room, how many folks have more than one namespace in a code file? It's something that when we analyzed the public GitHub repositories of folks that are using C#, in 99.9% of the code files, the public C# files that are out there, nobody has more than one namespace in a file. So let's just do that. Let's just define the namespace at the top of the file. Everything after it is in that namespace. Done. Done. Look at that. Now you don't need to be involved and have to manage and have everything tabbed over, right? My goodness. How many tabs can I save now because I don't have namespace in there? I don't have a using with the curly braces as well and pushing things over again. Keep things a little bit smaller, a little bit more concise. Yeah, you don't remember seeing it, right, Dave? I'm right there with you. Mel says fancy file structure in for simplifying it. Totally, right? We don't need it. These are ceremony things that we've been doing for years and years and years. And I'm right there with you. Oh my gosh, this looks different from the way I'm used to doing it. But you know what? Yeah. You know what? I'm okay with that because I never look back at the namespace. I've got this extra tab hanging in here. Yeah. So, let me see here. There was a question from David asking, is it possible to add our own namespaces to the implicit usings, or is it only the ones listed on that page? It is only the ones listed on that page, but that's where the global usings come in. Add your own global usings, right? The implicit usings is just generating, and those are the standard ones that come with .NET. The ones for your project, and just drop them into a file and have them sitting somewhere in whatever you want to call it, okay? And like I said, some folks are taking to calling it underscore imports or underscore usings.cs and just stash that off to the side. And if you start it with an underscore, it ends up floating to the bottom of the list of files in File Explorer or Solution Explorer because, right, it's not a letter. So it goes to the bottom. So that kind of works out nicely for folks. And once again, simplifying things. Don't need it, push it to the side. And this makes things a little bit easier to write and maintain. We can also now do string interpolation with our constants. So, right, $, and specify we'll join these things together. You can now do this type of interpolation to generate a constant that's composed of other things that are public static read only or constants, and concatenate things together. So version and some, right, if I want to make this instead of alpha, make it beta, this still updates and it has the appropriate value when I reference that constant. So not bad. There's other ways now that you can use string interpolation. We've done a lot of things to improve the performance of C# by making string interpolation faster by using memory of T, span of T behind the scenes, and using that technique when you're concatenating and working with other strings. So that's going to significantly help the way that you write code and get that performance bump without having to change your code too. You get to continue thinking about just deliver business value And we'll take care of making some of those lower level performance tuning for you. All right. Let me head back to the slides. So there's a bunch of other .NET 6 API changes, but those are some of those lifestyle C# 10 enhancements that we think are kind of important. Let's talk about what's new for Blazor in .NET 6. So bunch of things that are really cool out here. Header interactions, ahead of time compilation support, error boundaries. That means you can prevent errors from floating from one part of your user interface into the rest of the user interface. Query string component, yes, query string component parameters. So if you want to have a route that goes somewhere and handles from the query string, we can do that also. If you want to have a dependency on a native DLL, you can bring that along and use that in Blazor as well. And now you can also render Blazor components from JavaScript. Now we're already about an hour in. I'm not going to go through all of these. I want to get into the .NET MAUI preview, but let me show you. I have a Blazor application out here that's already built so that I don't need to go and reload all the things. It is here. Sure, go ahead and save that. Now, there we go. I called it AOT because I did write an ahead of time compilation version of this, but we see it's a Blazor application there. If I go into my pages index here, a couple things going on. We now have a page title tag that you can use to set the title of your application, of your page that somebody's navigated to. And just to make sure that I'm fair here, this is a Blazor WebAssembly application, and I can set the title, even though, right, Blazor WebAssembly kind of runs like a single page application in the browser, where each one of the pages you navigate to are kind of loaded into a shell HTML that manages the entire application. Well, we now have a component that allows you to set the page title. And we can also set other head content for our application. So if we want to specify maybe a different CSS sheet, or come on now, where's my cursor? There it is. Or I want to add a different meta tag in here, right? I can add that meta tag and it'll be only visible on this page. So that's kind of cool. Let me get into this in a second here. Let me just delete that. Actually, I'm just going to comment it. We'll show that in a second. Let me start the application and we'll take a look at this supply parameter from query, and also make sure you see that page title running for a Blazor WebAssembly application. And of course, it pushed it over to another screen. Not like I'm working over here. Come on, friend. Come on. It's going to navigate. Thanks. Go away. There we go. Another thing that you may notice, I'm not going to localhost 5000. There was folks, after building a bunch of applications, started to run into collisions where, well, localhost 5000 isn't necessarily where everything is. So what we've done now is we'll randomly generate and assign a port inside the settings file for your application when you generate a new application. This way, yeah, your application is going to be on a different port each time, but it'll always be on that same port after you generate it. Then you don't have, when you're working on 2 or 3 applications, they're not all trying to get to port 5000. So you'll see the page title there is index up at the top. And if I go and change that and call this, let's call this Cleveland Rocks, I'm going to save that. And it should, using hot reload, right? Give me the hot reload deal. There we go. Code change is applied successfully. No, it didn't do it. WebAssembly doesn't do this as well as the server side stuff, and it still didn't put it up there. See it? I knew it. I knew it. Nope. Go ahead, restart. The hot reload for WebAssembly, they were looking at pushing out because it wasn't quite ready. But hot reload for ASP.NET, hot reload for Blazor server side, all works well. Come on, where is it? I thought I said start go. Come on. I want to see that new page title. I mean, it's a simple thing. It's kind of a right there's the default title. It's the name of my project. And there we go. And now the appropriate title. Fine. If we go back and we start looking at wanting to pass in a name, and we would normally do it with a parameter like this, and we'd end up having to specify somewhere up here, right? A route, right? It's not square braces. It's like this, right? Am I remembering that right? I think that's right. That's right. Stop. And start that again. So if I don't specify a name, it's going to instead fall through and say, hello world. Come on. Starting up. And there we go. Nothing at this address because I didn't specify a name, because it's a required part of the route, because I didn't put a question mark on it. So there I get hello Jeff. But if I want it to be a query string instead, I can take that out, right? If I wanted it to be optional, I can put a question mark on it like that. But I'll take that out and I'll do this, make sure that that's nullable. So supply parameter from query says that we're going to look at the query string and we're going to look for a query string called name and be able to specify that. Yes, I know we need to restart. That's browser link. This one is the one I want. I get the two circle arrows confused. So there we go. And come on. There we go. And hello world. And if I start specifying a name equals Jeff, it's going to refresh because it's requested a new page. And of course it fills in, right? Whoever. It's going to grab that and load it in. But because I'm navigating on the address bar, it's reevaluating the entire page. If I had clicked a link that navigated there, it would evaluate that separately. All right, how we doing, chat room? Am I going too fast? Am I not going fast enough? Let me know. What did I do? What was the counter example that I had built in here? I have an oops. Oh, yes. So error content. There's an error boundary here, and I put as the current count divided by 0, which of course is an error. And instead of it taking down the entire page, it just displays the error content for what's been executed inside of here. Let me go over that again. Inside Blazor, inside my markup, I'm able to say, evaluate this child content. And if there's an error in there, don't let it go outside this error boundary and instead output this. Where if I didn't have it configured like that, let me just comment the rest of this out, right? If I had that error in there, and of course it's a contrived error, we restart that. This gets us some ugliness is what it gets us. Right? Loading, come on. Go through to counter, and I get well, this page is broken down here. And if I F12 into it, right? Come here, show me my DevTools. There we go. Thanks. Right, down into console. And I get some ugly error over here. Well, I have a way to handle it and make all of that just a little bit easier on everybody by using error boundaries. So I think when we're building larger applications and we already have to be defensive coding, this I think is going to save my bacon, because I'm going to be able to wrap those various places where I know there's going to potentially be an error and output something that handles it, maybe even a retry button or something. whatever I put in that error content is what's going to be output right there for me. All right. So we took a look at those couple items. All right. So the next thing that I had, and I already kind of peeked at it here, was .NET MAUI. And I want to talk about taking Blazor to native apps. Now, this is still very much in preview, but I can at least show you a little bit about what this looks like. So let's go File, New Project. And I've already installed all the templates for this. If you go into the Visual Studio installer, come on, there it is. Let's bring that over. And for your Visual Studio, you want to make sure in order to get the .NET Blazor for MAUI templates, we're trying to call it like hybrid Blazor or something like that. Make sure you turn on mobile development with .NET and over here, .NET MAUI preview. Additionally, if you want to be able to run the Android emulator, there is in here, you need to be able to turn on, go get the Google Android emulator. And if you're on an Intel device, Intel hardware, you want the Intel hardware accelerated execution manager. If you don't have those installed, that's okay. You can still build and work with Windows applications using .NET MAUI. There it is. All right, let's do it over here. File, New Project, and .NET MAUI Blazor app. There we go. Yep, that's fine. And there it is. Now this is, I'm running on a AMD Ryzen 9 processor here. There's a little bit of a challenge with some of the emulators right now. They're in preview, and this is some of the stuff that they're working through. Between Google and the .NET MAUI team, there's a lot of back and forth to make sure that we have a great experience for developers that are building with this. I'm not going to run this just yet, but I want you to take a look at the contents over here. MAUI program, and this is in the former format that we're used to seeing for building applications. I think this is going to end up getting slimmed down as well, like the other templates. But this has a main page, it has an application XAML here. If we take a look at main page XAML, check this out. Blazor web view, and it points to www.root index.html. That sounds familiar. This is a web view. This is a web browser that's embedded inside of our native application that's going to load up the contents of the index.html file sitting in the www root over here. And there it is. It looks like a Blazor application because it is. This has the ASP.NET Core Blazor server rendering capabilities built in. Everything's a locally hosted file, so you aren't even loading a web server. It's all rendering and returning the content directly to you in a special web browser that has all the other things stripped off of it. That web view, right? The Chromium web view, the stuff inside the browser. Think about folks building Electron web apps. Same idea, except all of our Blazor stuff is built in and native to the application. So I've got CSS sitting here. Check that out. Bootstrap, Open Iconic, icons, app CSS. And I've got a pages up here, and it's got all the default stuff from building a Blazor application. And if I start and I say run this, oh, look at you. This wasn't running the other time. No, I don't want to install iTunes. No, I was doing Windows. No, I'm not on an iOS device. Hang on. I'm on Windows here. Why is it? That's fun. That's fun. Target frameworks. I want this on Windows. It was here. I was able to do this the other day, I promise. Why? Where'd it go? Let me close and restart this. Was one of the possible solutions going on here. All right. There, see, it picked up all the other things. I went onto my Windows machine, and my framework is, it's not there. That's neat. Is it going to run it? I don't think it is. No. I've got mixed and match versions of .NET MAUI stuff here. And that's so weird. There it is building. Yes, deploy failed, I know. Because it's trying to build with Net6 instead of the Windows. Let me go over to the other app that I was working on. So I'm going to get rid of this. And see, this one has Net6 Windows 10. That's so weird. And it's in there also, and it wasn't in the other one. Well, I'll run this one. And it looks and feels like a Blazor app, but it doesn't have any Chrome around it. It looks more like a Windows application. It's got a cool .NET icon there. I've got the same hello world, the counter, being able to click through there, fetch data. Notice there's no flash with it loading or any of that stuff because it's running Edge here on Windows 11. I can even F12 on this and jump right into the dev tools for when you're building and interacting with this. See, it's going to web address 0000. So I'm able to build and work with this as a web developer and add those things that I'm used to seeing, right? Here is some more content. There it is. Because I've got hot reload working with this model and it's loading and putting the content in there for me. Very cool. Where I want to go and where I hope other web developers out there, where you see the advantage here is I can lift my Blazor content just as it sits inside my Blazor application and add it to this application and get things to appear right here. And it feels native. It looks native. I'll be able to package and deploy to iOS and Android. Now, it is in preview. You saw I'm running into a little clumsiness with that Windows. I'm going to try it one more time, just see what's going on over there. See if it loads the Windows library for me. Windows Machine Framework, and I'm not sure why the framework isn't appearing for this. It's not like I went and selected something that said, oh yeah, this is a Windows application. See, it's not even going in the box. Enable, I haven't even gotten into these things yet. But is it, no, it's not showing up. Well, we're going to have complete documentation on how to do this. And like I said, yeah, why is it not appearing there? Then over here, it is. No matter. All right. So that's coming soon. Lots more happening with it. I'm really excited about the ability to take my Blazor app and put it in here. And you see one of the websites that I've been working on that has Twitch clips that it can play. We're getting those. I'm getting that. I've even got a div with an iframe here to play Twitch clips. I'm getting that loaded and working inside of a .NET MAUI app so it can run and be a portable application on folks' phones. So exciting stuff coming soon. All right. Let me, I want to, come here, you. There we go. And back to the slides. So the schedule. November 2021 is the long-term servicing release. That's .NET 6 coming out, and that is November 8th and 9th, okay? November 8th is Visual Studio. November 9th is .NET Conf. It's a week long of events. We've got 4 days of events, virtual events that you can check out on all of our developer properties online. So .NET 5 was released last November. It'll only be available, it'll only be supported for a few months after the .NET 6 release. This is the difference between our current release and our long-term servicing releases. Current releases are only available and supported for a little bit after that long-term servicing release. But when the long-term servicing release comes out, you've got 3+ years of support available to you. So there's actually going to be a little bit of time here where .NET Core 3.1 and .NET 6 are both supported in 2022. There'll come a point later in 2022 where only .NET 6 is supported. That'll be your only version of .NET Core or .NET 5, .NET 6 that is fully supportive. So before I come back to that question, so .NET 7, .NET 8, .NET 9, they are scheduled. We're not quite sure what's going to arrive in them. We're sizing .NET 7 now, but they will be released in November in 2022, 2023, 2024, going forward. Conversely, .NET Framework, right? We remember .NET Framework. That shipped with Windows. You got a new patches every Patch Tuesday on that. You got a new version when there was a new version of Windows or a new Visual Studio, because .NET Framework is part of Windows. .NET Framework 4.8.1 is part of Windows Server, 2019, and is going to be fully supported because it ships with Windows until at least 2029. Now, okay, hey, look, that's great. It's got this long-term support. It does, because it's part of Windows, but it can't evolve and change and grow to meet your needs like .NET Core and now .NET 6 can. So we're really excited about what's happening with .NET 6. I'm going to take a look back over here at chat, and Jim has a question. What's the resource utilization like on MAUI compared to WinForms WPF? I believe it's less. Don't quote me on that, because they've optimized where WinForms WPF, they've had to meet compatibility with how .NET Framework runs. Because .NET MAUI is a fresh start, they've been able to take advantage of some of the performance enhancements that are available. I believe it's less. If not, they have the ability to reduce that performance footprint over the next year or two. But right now the focus is they need to get this thing shipped, and they want to get it shipped before spring 2022 is the goal. So when you mentioned there's essentially a mini web server in there, it raised eyebrows. Kestrel is extremely fast. Kestrel, the ASP.NET web server, is very, very fast in there. If I go out here and I go to the Tech Empower benchmarks, right? We love to quote these Tech Empower benchmarks. You might be tired of us talking about these, but in February 2021, and where do we go? Over here, the number 2 fastest web server out there, ASP.NET Core, with 7.016 million requests per second. That's pretty darn fast. And written C#, .NET platform. The other one up here, Pico.v, is written in the V language. I don't know what the V language is, but it's not a platform. It's a micro framework. It's built to be very small, be very optimized for doing things extremely quick. There is no support for this out there. This isn't an enterprise grade thing. It's almost an academic thing, where ASP.NET Core, production support, all the things with it. The question folks always ask me then is, well, where's Node on this? Node is 173 at 665,000 requests a second at 9.5% the speed of the fastest web server out there. So Oh, and Peach Pie was on that list also. I don't know if you noticed that. There's Peach Pie. Peach Pie, of course, is PHP running on .NET, and that still clocks in at about 620,000 requests per second. So there's other tests that they run out here. Json Serialization is one that we've been improving on. Come on, there it is. 1.17 million requests per second. Right, because we're layering this now on top of the web server. So it's getting faster. All of these are getting better, and part of what you're seeing with shrinking the footprint of our C# code, of the memory, and being able to do things with structs, being able to do things that are immutable, are going to get your code faster on these types of benchmarks. No one runs Node for speed. Well, that's not what they used to say to us. So, and don't get me wrong, compared to the original ASP.NET, Node is faster. To ASP.NET Core, it's not a comparison anymore. So, all right. If you want to know what's coming, after we have the .NET 6 release, if you're interested in what's happening for .NET, we have this website, themesof.net, you can go to, and we are doing our planning in the open for .NET. These are the features that we're building and that are going to be coming as part of there. You see .NET 6, .NET 7. So you can even click through to roadmap there, .NET 7, and you can choose, you want to look at runtime, libraries, application models, tooling, and you can see how things are planned to be growing here with .NET going forward. So look at that, Visual Studio finally finished loading there. So more capabilities, open API updates for .NET 7, resource limits, being able to manage those. So these are all things that are being planned. .NET MAUI, Blazor developers can target and deploy their applications, allowing them to run natively, and that's in progress. So I encourage you to check out themes of .NET for more about that. There you go, there's the URL. Eric asks a question here in chat. Is there a migration path from WPF to MAUI? Not currently. The XAML that's been built and the XAML engine that's being used for .NET MAUI is the Xamarin engine, because that was the one that we had that runs cross-platform. So we effectively upgraded Xamarin to become .NET MAUI and merge it in with the rest of the framework. Upgrading from WPF to MAUI is something that we do want to enable folks to do. And there is out there the .NET, .NET Upgrade Assistant. There we go. The .NET Upgrade Assistant ships with .NET 6, and what this will do is give you all insight based on our experiences upgrading folks' applications from .NET Framework to .NET Core and now .NET 5, .NET 6. And it will help upgrade your MVC applications, your WinForms applications, your WPF applications to .NET 5 and then .NET 6. We think at some point upgrading, doing a conversion to .NET MAUI could appear in here. We'll figure that out once we've shipped a version of .NET MAUI. I wouldn't bet the farm that it's coming in 2021 or early 2022. It would be later in the .NET 7 cycle if that's a priority and appears in here. But that's definitely a bit of feedback we want to hear, is as MAUI rolls out and folks check it out and start using it, if they like it, is there a story? Is there a compelling story for migrating your applications from WPF to .NET MAUI? So I really appreciate the question, Eric. That is a great point that we need to run surveys and understand, is that something folks want to do, or does it make sense to stay on WPF? I love the idea of migrating WPF to .NET MAUI, because then I can right? I can answer that question that the boss asked me back in 2010, 2011. Hey, can I get my dashboard application that you've been building for me, Fritz? Can I get that running on my iPad? I just went out to Best Buy and bought the iPad because Steve Jobs was talking about it. Why can't I get your dashboard that you're building over here on my iPad? Well, it doesn't work that way. Well, if we can make it work that way, now we're talking. Now we've got a thing, right? So I think you're onto something there. That's what I had for today. We've been here for about an hour and a half. Do you have any other questions? And certainly, I've glazed over some of these topics. If you want to go deep on them, I encourage you. The program managers for each of these products are going to be hosting half-hour-long sessions as part of .NET Conf in 2 weeks. I would tell you, check out the website for that. There are the entire schedule is out there. .NETconf.net. There we go. I've been working hard to try and get this all hammered out. There you go. There's the schedule for Tuesday. Tuesday is a lot of the .NET team talking about here's the new things, including F#6. There's your introduction to .NET MAUI, minimal APIs with .NET 6, updates for Entity Framework Core. I didn't even get into and show you how Json Serialization now generates code for you so it runs faster. So when you serialize some type into a class from JSON on disk, it actually generates the code for that and saves it at compile time for you, so it doesn't use reflection to go and build things. And Entity Framework Core benefits from that significantly. There's Upgrade Assistant talk. If you take a look at Wednesday, day 2, there's other sessions from Microsoft folks talking about different ways to integrate .NET 6 with ML.NET, Azure Communication Services, Power Platform. But starting at 5 is Community Day, and there are presentations from folks from all over the world, 6 of the 7 continents. Check out all the cool stuff that's going to be happening out here that you can tune into. So .NET Interactive Notebooks, folks talking about how they learn .NET, benchmarking .NET applications, and it goes all night long. You don't have to stay up to watch everything. It's all recorded. It'll all be available on YouTube. If you want to stay up, if you want to hang out for the party, I'm going to be up also. There'll be folks available out there so you can tune in, hosting and interacting out there. Check it out. Running .NET workloads on the IBM Z, unit testing Blazor with .NET 6, hand-drawn controls with .NET MAUI, GraphQL. Really great content. I hope you check it out. We've been working really hard to get .NET Conf off the ground. That's not next Wednesday. Next Tuesday after next. So about 10 days out. Make sure you tune in to .NET Conf for more, or at the very least, check out the YouTube videos afterwards. All right. How we doing there, Sam?
We're doing great, Jeff. Any questions from anyone, either in chat or verbally? And doesn't look like we have any questions.
Cool.
Allow me to post a few links in the chat window. Oh,
I
one
was
question.
going to ask a question. I just wanted to give people a chance.
Go for it.
In the grand summation of things, I was just wondering. So my current situation is that I'm at a company where they're just starting to kind of modernize their software, but they're very much and very deep into .NET. So
Okay.
do you think it's going to be a hard buy or a hard sell to try and get them to at least move with .NET 6 because of all the great things that it's bringing in, all of the support? Or do you have any key notes of hope for someone who's fairly new to a team to try and push for this?
.NET 6 should be an easy sell because it's very compatible with .NET 5, with .NET Core 3.1. You don't need to modify your code significantly to get from one framework to the next. Really, for some of the applications that I've been working on, it's been as easy as just upgrade the version numbers in the project files for the packages and the SDK that I'm using and recompile. If you want to take advantage of some of the performance enhancing features, some of the C# 10 features that I showed, global usings, implicit usings, that kind of thing, you're going to have to write a little bit of code to take advantage of that and see a little bit more of that performance bump. The big selling point that I think you can bring is the support clock starts now, versus if you're using an older version of .NET, you might be near the end of the support clock, especially looking forward to 2022, where .NET Core 3.1 and .NET 5 support ends in January, February, March 2022. So if you're building a new application, if you're maintaining existing applications, to give it a try and remap those version numbers shouldn't be too hard to test out and see, do we have significant breakage? Unlike
Okay. No, that's super helpful, because we're moving over from just classic pages over to Blazor. So I figured,
love it.
why not? I
Yeah.
know, right? I'm so excited. So yeah, it's just I wanted some kind of ammo to go into it with, so
Okay.
that whenever it comes out, I can say, hey, here's what it has to offer. It's no pressure, but also it's low risk.
It's low risk. If you want to see a website out there that it points folks to that runs Blazor WebAssembly, this is Fritz's Hat Collection. I point folks to this all the time. And why is it taking so long to load? There it is. These are some of the. I'm not going to mention how many hats I have, but I have hats. I have a lot of baseball hats, and these are being loaded out of a database. And this is all WebAssembly to display this. A little bit of CSS animation to flip these around, but there's a little search up here, so you can search for. I think I have Star Wars hats here, right? So do a search, and there's a couple Star Wars hats. Baby Yoda hat. So Mandalorian, SpaceX, Visual Studio. So a whole bunch of easy to tinker around, and you can look at, and you can. The big question we get about Blazor is, well, gosh, how much space is it on disk? That feels like it's so big. What's going on there? Right now, I don't know if have your folks run into that question and been trying to figure out, well, what do we do with this, that kind of thing.
That hasn't been a super big problem. It's more been, so, hey, we have this whole
Terrific.
site written in JavaScript. We want Blazor, And I was like,
Yeah,
okay, I mean, that's your call.
yeah,
Let's do it.
for sure. So when I reload this and tell it to bring in all the things, it was 8.8 meg, and it was 3 meg of resources, including all the images and things to present, right? And you could see all the DLLs in here, and that did all the tree shaking and linking, so it didn't go and do that. But oh my gosh, 3 meg, that's so much. But when you look at how much YouTube or Twitch downloads to run in your browser, it's more than that. So, right, I was at Twitch TV. Sure, we'll go to Visual Studio. Even before, right, there we go. It's not loading any video, but it's loaded 4.2 meg just to load that one page. So all the images, all the things, and I can even limit that down to just the JavaScript. And right, we're still looking at, for just this one page, it's a ton, and they're not caching any of it. Right, so.
Well, that's really good to hear. Where it's like scaling's a super big concern. So
Yep, absolutely. So when I reload this, now that I have all the DLLs cached, it only loaded 64K. Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking. And this is actually an older one on .NET 3.2. So when I upgrade this to .NET 6, it's going to be even faster. So I'm really happy to hear that. All the best. And if you have questions, if your folks run into challenges, drop me a line on Twitter to help you out with getting Blazor running. I'm very interested in the success of folks with Blazor. Let's see, Dave has a question here in chat. I'm only minimally familiar with Blazor. Will it have an easier way to interact with things like the HTML canvas? The canvas element that required direct manipulation via JavaScript. No, you're going to need to reach in and do some interop on that right now. That's that's something that you will have to write some JavaScript interrupt to interact with those elements. That's just the nature of how the APIs are exposed in the browser at this point. With the changes that just came out to support native DLLs, there was on the .NET ASP.NET community stand-up last week. Where is it? Yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, Blazor native interop with Skia Sharp, so that you could do that type of drawing interaction on the right on the canvas. So Skia Sharp now running live with Blazor, and I'll drop this link so you can see more about that. There you go. And we think this is a good option for folks to check out and interact with that, because this is a well-known library that's now running and available on top of Blazor. So having that portability across frameworks, we think is a pretty good deal. Jim has a question here. Do the framework Blazor DLLs load from a CDN? They do not. And the reason for that is because you're doing tree shaking on these things when you publish. So it's not always the exact same shape when you load those into somebody's browser. That's kind of actually a good thing. So what's in your system.text.json DLL is different from what's in somebody else's. Yeah, we could have built and shipped and compiled that together, and here it is. Here's the standard one, and it's installed all the time. But that's what .NET MAUI with Blazor does, is you're shipping all those DLLs and things, and you get that native app. Okay, now you have to do the maintain, the versions back and forth. You don't get quite that same deployment capability that you do with putting things on a web server with a CDN replicating things. I do have an application out there that is built. It does use Azure Front Door, so I do replicate those DLLs. This is called ClipTalk. ClipTalk.com. I'm going to actually jump right through to my page. And this is WebAssembly running on an Azure static website that's, sure, go ahead, log me back in. Fine, I'm Visual Studio, that's fine. So go ahead. What this does is has all those DLLs cached on a CDN that are being replicated and available around the world to be downloaded faster into my application. Now, okay, I'm maintaining that CDN and deploying into it so that as there are changes, there are new versions of things made available, and I control the deployment and the update of that. So yeah, you'll recognize this guy talking on his stream out here about all the things. And we can search for the Visual Studio channel. There it is. And there's the Visual Studio channel and some of the cool things that have been happening over here. You can search through and see some of the cool viewed things that are happening. That was at .NET Conf a couple years ago. I know this guy. So that's all Blazor, WebAssembly, and it's being deployed with a CDN. Things are being delivered. There's Dan Roth from all over the world. So have a good one, Dave. Thanks so much for tuning in. Tree shaking is good news, says Jim. Tree shaking is a strategy to enhance performance of initial load. Yes, tree shaking, and we also do Brotli compression, not broccoli compression. Gosh, President Bush would hate that. But Brotli, B-R-O-T-L-I compression, so that you get the highest compression of those DLLs that get shipped in the browser. So when they do get delivered, the browsers know how to decompress those things very, very quickly. So that's where you're going to see a bit of performance bump, because we have this compression that runs when you .NET pack your application, right? This application is being built on GitHub Actions, being published out to Azure Static Web Apps, and it does that Brotli compression. We can see it making this very, very small into GitHub Actions as it goes to publish out to the websites. So 4 minutes to build, but when we take a look at the build script here, we can go down here. Show me that. Yeah, you're not going to show me the .NET publish. Preparing output, copying files, and that's the service Azure functions. When you build, I don't know if you've worked with this, but when you build with Azure Static Websites, it builds an Azure Functions application and a Blazor with WebAssembly website. Oh, it is using, look at that, it's using RC2 now, fantastic. Must have just updated, but there we go, it's building all the things. Show me the compression down here. There's the tests. Come on. There we go. Blazor output into this. And there it is, compressing the Blazor WebAssembly publish artifacts. So then it uploads them, it creates a manifest and uploads all of that out to Azure as part of that process. So have a good one, Mel. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate you joining us. That's the Google created compression algorithm. That's about 25% or so better than previous ones. Yeah. All right. Cool. Any other questions? All right, Sam.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. It was a very insightful and awesome presentation as always.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And hey, friends, I hope to see you. .NET Conf, like I said, I'll be hosting day 2. I'll be hosting live from our studios. It's going to be a great event, and I hope you tune in.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. If you don't mind, I'm going to take back the presenter mode.
Yep,
Just
go
have
for
some wrap-up announcements to discuss. And let's go over into the PowerPoint, and there we go. All right, so I already dropped off a few links in the chat window regarding the resources, that being the recording of the presentation, which will be posted on YouTube. And if you subscribe to the channel, you'll get upload notifications. Pardon the misspelling of notifications there, but you'll get the notifications once the video is edited and uploaded. In addition, events that I will cover in just a little bit will be posted on my blog, samnasser.blogspot.com. And lastly, the feedback eval. That's also listed in the chat window. So I would appreciate your feedback. Also, for those that may have missed it at the beginning, a special offer from Manning Publications, where we get 35% off using the URL and the discount code listed there. And that was also listed in the chat window. Events. What's happening as far as virtual user groups? In November 17th is the Hudson Codecraft, and they're going to be meeting online on November 17th. November 18th is the Great Lakes Users Group that meets out of the Detroit area, and they're going to be meeting virtually as well, November 18th. And then November 23rd will be the November meeting of the C# VB.NET User Group. However, please keep in mind, although typically we meet every Thursday, because of Thanksgiving happening that week, we had to move it to a Tuesday. So it will be on November 23rd. We do not have a speaker lined up, but it is in the works, and we should have something shortly. As far as virtual conferences, October 29th through the 31st, which is starting tomorrow, is the Azure Community Conference. And you can register for that at azconf.dev. And November 8th through the 12th is the PASS Data Community Summit. Chances are, if you work in .NET, you're also working with data. And so there's a great lineup of talks regarding data, SQL Server, data in Azure. So it's definitely a great event to attend. And then last but certainly not least is .NET Conf, as Jeff had mentioned. That is going to be taking place November 9th through the 11th, online, all day, November 9th through the 11th. So it's something not to be missed. Lastly, in closing, I'd like to thank Tech Systems for sponsoring the meeting space in the past and in the future. In addition, you can visit them at techsystems.com for IT jobs. And always like to ask, who's hiring and who's looking for work? Feel free to either jump in verbally or through chat. Anyone have any positions available that they're looking to fill? Going once, twice. All right, maybe not this time around. Lastly, my contact information, if you have any questions, snasser@nistechnologies.com. And you can also find me on Twitter. And the events will be posted on my blog, as I had mentioned, samnasser.blogspot.com. And I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn. And so with that, thank you all for attending and look forward to seeing you at the next event on November 23rd. Good night, everyone.